Welcome in, everybody. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel. He's there at DKR right now, just getting out of Steve Sarkisian's Monday press conference. CJ, Steve Sarkisian, talk a little bit about the UTSA game, recapping that this morning. Then also talking about the injuries of the injuries of Quinn Ewers, as well as the play of Quinn Ewers and the play of Arch Manning, among others. Ryan Wingo, Colin Simmons, and some others. We got a lot we want to talk about, but first, let's go to Steve Sarkisian. Just moments ago, this is Coach Sark at the podium.
A couple things for us coming out of the ball game last week. Played 77 players again of our 120. 6 different guys scored touchdowns. 9 different guys carried the football. 11 different guys, caught a pass, and I think we had 28 different players credit themselves with a defensive stat or a tackle. So a lot of guys playing, a lot of guys contributing. That is big for us. It's critical for us that we continue to develop our players and continue to work on our depth, because our depth is getting tested at some very specific positions, most notably at quarterback with Quinn. Now that Quinn, first of all, prior to the injury, was having a really good football game. I think he was like 14 to 16, was very efficient, was playing at a high level. There was a non-contact deal, which we touched on, the oblique strain there. Next week, when you guys get your injury report on next Wednesday, that officially begins, he would be listed as questionable. Okay, so it's really, we're going to monitor him day to day and see what this looks like, but he would be questionable for Saturday on the report for next week. So we'll see how that goes. And on the flip side of that, it was a great opportunity for Arch to have to come in off the bench when you're not, hey, next series you're in. So as a backup, you have to be ready to go. I thought Arch performed really, really well for us. So that he ran our offense. He looks poised and composed. There were some learning curves in there, a couple things to learn from, but at the end of the day, thought he played at a high level and he was getting some of the honors for that. So congratulations to him on that. And then I think just as a team, it was really a game of complementary football. I thought offensively we created explosive plays. I think we averaged a little over 9 yards a play, and then defensively, I think we held them to 3.8 yards per play, and that's with a 53-yard touchdown run that was really just kind of a misfit and a bust on our part. I love the fact that when we did have the sudden change on the interception, our defense comes out and gets a stop on 3rd and 1, and then on 4th and 1 to get the ball right back. It was a heck of a play on 3rd down by Alfred Collins, and then a really nice play on the 4th down with Jade Barron. They were trying to pitch that ball to the edge, setting the edge, and then us rallying to the football. So there was a lot of really good things. But like today, I noticed with our coaches and in our meetings, our coaches are coaching hard. They're being really demanding of our guys right now, and the appreciation I have for our players is that they're accepting the tough coaching, and they're being really coachable. We know we're not a finished product. We know we've got work to do. We know we're going to have to play better, and that's we say it every time. Better never rests, and we've got to continue to strive to improve. And I think our football team is doing that right now. Obviously, we got ULM coming in, 2-0 football team. I think Coach Vincent's done a terrific job. These guys were 2-10 a year ago. He took over. They're 2-0 right now. They believe in hard-nosed, tough football. They're going to run the ball. They're going to utilize the play-action pass to take their shots at you. They play good defense. And so they're just playing sound, good football with a lot of new faces and transfers. So we've got to prepare accordingly to put our best foot forward Saturday night.
All right, that's Steve Sarkisian just at the mic moments ago. CJ, you were there. Let's start with the Quinn Ewers injury, because that is something that Sark then went in further in during the press conference and explained more fully. Give folks the latest on Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, Sarkisian said that Quinn Ewers is questionable for ULM this week. He said they're going to monitor it day by day as the week progresses, which means more first team reps for Arch Manning, more second team reps for Trey Owens now that he is stepping up as well with a possible, inactive for Quinn Ewers on Saturday. He did confirm that the injury to Quinn was a non-contact injury that occurred on the corner route to Gunnar Helm, and he said, essentially nobody noticed because you saw the hurdle, you saw the catch and the run from Gunnar Helm, and everybody was oohing and awing at that. No one really looked back to see that Quinn Ewers wasn't, really himself. And evidently the next play after the handoff, you saw him go down holding his side, and that was it. There was no mention of a thumb injury, a hand injury, anything like that. Leads me to believe that it's not as serious that maybe as it looked on the broadcast when he was only high-fiving with his left hand there, Bobby, or Texas wants to keep that under wraps. One of the two. But right now, Quinn Ewers is questionable. He reiterated that several times during his press conference. Other injury note, Jaden Blue. He's going to be a guy in which they evaluate today, tomorrow, and Wednesday to see if he can give it a go. A guy that I was mentioned last week, Bobby, that if this game was a Georgia and Oklahoma at Texas A&M, you likely would have seen Jaden Blue at some point on the field. Fortunately, again, you didn't necessarily need him in a 49-point win at home, but they will monitor him and give him a bit of an update later this week as well.
Sark also said Jelani McDonald seems to be improving as well. He was out last week too. So some injury updates there for the Longhorns, not only Quinn Ewers, but also Jaden Blue and Jelani McDonald. Let's talk a little bit about Arch, because Sark had some key things to say there after breaking down the film of the young quarterback. What did Sark have to say there?
He said he's really, really efficient, and I think you can tell that by the yardage, the touchdowns, 5 touchdowns on 29 snaps, 9 of 12 passing. He made the right decision. Said really only 2 throws got away from him. One of them was in which he was getting hit on a sideline throw to Matthew Gold, and the other one was a bit of a crossing route to DeAndre Moore, in which he just led him just a little bit. Of course, he is human. Some of those errant throws do happen at the quarterback position, especially when you aren't necessarily used to the speed of the game, but overall, you see the big plays, you see the ability to go down there and create scoring opportunities for your team. And he said he was very pleased. One thing I did notice, and one thing I put up on Texas Football earlier today, Bobby, the use of motion, not necessarily overwhelming as we've seen with Texas in the first 2 weeks. Of course, they were hovering right around 70% the first 2 weeks. With Quinn against UTSA, it was right around 53%. When Arch came in, it dropped all the way down to 40. So I'm not sure if that's something that we'll monitor a little bit further, in the sense that maybe the playbook with motion and the use of pre-snap misdirection, maybe not there yet completely with Arch, but it is something worth monitoring. Overall, a good day. And, of course, they were back in the film room today diagnosing the good, the bad, the ugly with the quarterbacks, with A.J. Milne, and what to expect for ULM coming up this weekend.
All right, he also talked about Ryan Wingo and Colin Simmons. I want to ask you about those in a second. But before we go there, I want to say thank you to Autograph, the app that curates the best content, tickets, and gear to help you fan to your full potential. Being a fan is a full-time job, so Autograph does the heavy lifting for you, from tickets for the big matchups to breaking news. The Autograph app has curated content for fans of all things Texas. All the podcasts, articles, game predictions you could ever want, including the On Texas Football Show. You have it there on Autograph. Use code ONTexas to download for free on Google Play or the Apple App Store today. Thank you to our friends over at Autograph. All right, hey, he really had some nice things to say about Ryan Wingo. He said that, he was asked to compare him to a couple of his other previous young wide receivers that made a dent for him when he was at USC, Dwayne Jarrett and Mike Williams. He said the difference right now is that every single game, Ryan Wingo is having an explosive play. But he then went on further and described something that was unique maybe about Ryan compared to some others that I thought was pretty cool, CJ.
Yeah, certainly. And that's that humility, that will to come in and work and improve every single day. Says, you see guys with 5 stars next to their name, and sometimes they don't have that drive because, they're talented. They can get by off of talent. Well, for a Wingo and a guy who's coming into an already crowded wide receiving room, it's standing out more so than maybe some of the other top prospects that Sarkisian's coached in the past at Alabama, at USC, at Washington. Really noticeable with Ryan Wingo and his work ethic. Of course, worth mentioning again, that explosivity, Bobby. I mean, I don't know if there's been a play for Ryan Wingo in which you haven't looked down and said, okay, wow, that wasn't, what we expected from him. Every single target has been completed. He's up to 197 yards on 7 receptions. He has a 55-yard run against Michigan. You look at the touches or the yards per touches. Whew, That's about 32 and a half yards per touch right now for a true freshman 3 weeks into his collegiate career. That's pretty darn good if you ask me. And so far, that's going to continue to be a case in the Texas offense to see the big playability with Ryan Wingo, and his role will only increase as the season continues.
Hey, Sark talked a little bit about the running backs today. He mentioned when talking about Jaden Blue's injury, CJ. And then he also talked about how Trey Wisner is just getting a real feel for the position at Texas after, a situation where he was mostly a backup last year. He's just getting used to the blocking schemes. Jarrett Gibson comes in. Sark called him Baby Rhino. Said that he looks for somebody, and it's like they have the red dot on their head, and he's running right at him. It was very interesting to hear him say that. What did you get from Sark out of the discussion of the running game? Because he even admitted it himself, and we talked about this on Texas football this morning and yesterday. The running game for Texas right now is not typical. It's not your typical running game. It's almost more of a pro-style running attack that resembles kind of what the Kansas City Chiefs do with a guy like Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, certainly. I kind of look at this run game now in a sense that it's almost there just to create a break for the quarterbacks in the offensive line and pass protection, right? You can't necessarily pass the ball every single play, but if you ask Sarkisian, and with the way that we saw that game start out, I think he would certainly like to do that with 16 of the first 20 play attempts being passes. So, this run game will continue to develop. He said right now with the way that Jarrett Gibson and Trey Wisner are kind of finding their mold right now, they'll find different play schemes and different blocking formations in which suit their skill set. Of course, Baby Rhino, the way that he called him, he's looking for contact. And Sark had to reiterate with Tashard Choice today that, hey, at times it's okay to just try and put a move on a guy, make him miss and keep extending, some of those rush attempts. But, hey, when you're running – the way that Jarrett Gibson is running right now, good things are coming. And, of course, he reiterated again later today, Bobby, that fumble that Jarrett Gibson had late in that game against UTSA, a good learning opportunity for him, and it's one of those things in which you don't necessarily understand that game situation until you go through it and, you go through those, hoops and hurdles and whatnot. But the running game certainly is something that they're hoping to see more explosive plays from. And for a second straight week, Bobby, we've heard the wide receiver room has a point of emphasis of really starting to, finish some of those blocks on the perimeter. Obviously, we saw the catch and run by Isaiah Bond for the 50-yard touchdown, but some of those rush attempts, you could have likely seen some bigger, gains there offensively with some more completed blocking down the field from the running back room.
Well, after the win and the great performance by not only Quinn Ewers, then followed up by Arch Manning, Texas certainly in great shape at quarterback. The focus then turned to the national rankings on Sunday, and not to talk about the elephant in the room, but here it comes. Texas ranked number 1. What did Steve Sarkisian have to say about that lofty ranking for his Longhorns?
I was hoping to hear the word rat poison, Bobby, but we didn't hear it. However, we did hear that, the rankings are great. It gives us media folks something to talk about. It gives something the fans to be excited about. For the most part, that number 1 ranking has yet to really trickle down into the Texas locker room. So if you go in there and you ask the Texas locker room if they care about it, if they've been talking about it, the answer pretty widely would be no. And he says, they're focused on what's ahead. The game plan in the locker room, that camaraderie that they're building right now, and of course, what's to come with ULM later this week. Says they're not necessarily focused. They know that there's a lot of work yet to be done. They've only played 3 games on a 12-game schedule and then expect to play some more games after that. What's also interesting is Sarkisian basically kind of dismissed the idea that it means anything, right? You're 3 weeks in, and, the BCS era, in a pre-playoff era, it probably would matter a little bit more. You'd probably be seeing Texas run it up even more so than they are, because that's what was needed in the BCS era. He says in the 12-team playoff, where you're necessarily ranked or seated, it doesn't matter as much. Of course, you'd like to be a top 4 team, but at the end of the day, you have to then go out and win those playoff games, which is something that, it kind of diminishes that number 1 ranking 3 weeks into the season. However, he did say it is cool. It is fun for the fans. It is fun for us to talk about. And, he did say this was something that he envisioned in 2021 when he took over the job. He said, at 5-7, we had a plan. and to see that plan in action and to see the steps that we've gone through to make this a possibility and a reality, we're not going to change anything. It's worked to get us here. We're going to make sure this is something that we keep at the forefront of our coaching, of our development, and make sure that we stay in this conversation moving forward.
Yeah, on being ranked number one, the quote that I really like, CJ, that he used is, better never rests.
Yeah.
So if you want to get better, you can look up at the number one all you want, but if you're not working to get better, you're just sitting tight and not getting better. That's not the recipe for success. One of the things that he also talked about that I thought is a recipe for success, he talked about fan engagement on game day. He really, really appreciates DKR right now and the fact that it's becoming a home field advantage. He talked about not only the idea that there's 100,000 people there, CJ, but also that they're staying until the end of the game. It's not just, once it's a blowout, everybody leaves. It feels like that's something that's building at DKR, and I don't think it's going to stop when you have the number one team in the nation now here in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, certainly. And this has been a point I've tried to make since the summer, but the efforts by Chris Del Conte and the athletics department to make this a fun night out, not just a football game, but the team is good and the, fan interaction and engagement is also very enjoyable. That's going to help create an even more home field advantage feel for the Longhorns when SEC play starts rolling around. And that's when you start to see some of those conversations about DKR, about the home field advantage for Texas start to change. I think it really started to pivot a little bit whenever Texas hosted Alabama in 2022. And, of course, you hear Will Anderson afterwards saying that was the most deafening, toughest place that I've played in my career. And it was an 11 a.m. kick. Well, just wait a little bit later this year. We got a good taste already. UTSA at home. You'll get ULM at home. Those are going to be a little bit of a test run in my eyes for what will be a really, really tough place to play against Georgia, against Florida, when Kentucky comes to town for SEC play. Of course, that's when it matters. And I think for Sarkisian to tip his cap a little bit to the Longhorn faithful for sticking around from start to finish in a 50-point blowout, no less. And let's not forget, Bobby, it was pretty hot Saturday as well. So for that to be the case, Texas faithful, they get a tip of the cap from Sarkisian, but also that narrative around DKR in the environment here is going to change later on this year once more folks are kind of accepted to the fact that this is going to be a pretty fun environment for the Longhorns.
Yeah, there weren't 10,000 UTSA fans in the audience on Saturday night. There will be when Georgia comes to town. There will be 10,000 Georgia fans. Hey, we talked about Ryan Wingo. One other true freshman Sark spent some time with was Colin Simmons, young man out of Duncanville. It was interesting to hear what he had to say there.
Yeah, just his ability to continue to develop each week. He's taken little bits of coaching and put that into his game. And, it's helped grow him into a guy that's already seeing 30 snaps a game, right? And that's been a gradual increase. He actually likened it to what he saw a little bit last year from Anthony Hill, right? You start him out with 20 to 25, then you get him up to 30, and by, middle of the year almost, you'll start seeing him not come off the field. And right now, Colin Simmons, with the way that he's been able to affect the passer, his quickness off the edge, but also his kind of versatility, Bobby, to drop back into coverage at times, it provides and gives a different chapter to what this Texas playbook can provide defensively. He's a heck of a football player. 2 straight games with a sack. He's been up to about 10 to 12 pressures in those 2 games as well. Texas is going to continue to utilize him as SEC play nears, and that continued increase of development and skill set that he brings to the table each week is something that you're going to see grow and grow and grow as the season moves on.
All right, CJ Vogel there at DKR post Steve Sarkisian press conference. If you're just now joining us, we played the opening statement from Steve Sarkisian at the beginning of this video. Please check back in on that. Before I let you go, CJ, anything else you want to add that you gleaned from this presser earlier today?
Yeah, I think the number one thing for me is it was a continued theme throughout the press conference, Bobby, is the individual coaching rooms, position rooms, they're still coaching very hard. Sarkisian mentioned it several times, whether it be the fumble by Jared Gibson, Tashard Choice got onto him, whether it be the wide receivers not necessarily blocking down the field the way that they want them to, Chris Jackson is getting onto him. Arch Manning, He made his right reads for the majority of his plays. Still ways that he can improve. A.J. Millery and Sarkisian have been in his ear. And, of course, run fits defensively. We talked about the linebackers. We talked about getting home, creating pressure on the quarterbacks, and not busting in the secondary. Every facet of this Texas football team right now is finding ways to improve somewhere this week against ULM, coming off the game against UTSA. So that's the number one thing. He said the standard is the standard. We've heard that all season, but now better doesn't rest is also a theme that we're continuing to hear from Sarkisian, and this staff is making sure that the complacency does not show up at all before SEC play comes around for at DKR.
All right, to sum up, Quinn Ewers would be listed as questionable. Steve Sarkisian said if it were a SEC game upcoming and he had to deliver an injury report, also talked at length about the injury current situation with Jaden Blue and Jelani McDonald. McDonald coming along, Blue coming along as well. We'll see if either of those guys play this week. Right now, Sark was non-committal in that regard, in my opinion. Then also talked about the idea of being number one and the really the way Texas needs to think about that and just look forward. Don't look at anywhere else but your next opponent. All right, that's going to do it. CJ, thank you so much, bud. From there, we'll be back later today. Winning Drive starts at 3. CJ, you'll be there along with Bob Shipley and Rod Babers tonight. Talking Ball at 7 o'clock. For CJ, as well as our producer, Matt Hutchison, I'm Bobby Burton. Hook 'em.